Hello, fellow Star Wars fans and all the Mando fans out there. This is Star Raptor coming in at you from the Star Raptor YouTube channel. We are reviewing with my buddy Real Ben Maynard the episode 4. We are halfway through The Mandalorian Season 2, episode 4, The Siege. So this episode brought back some good old fan favorite characters of Cara Dune and Grief Karga. We go back to Navarro, and we aren't done with the Empire yet on Navarro, as we see in this episode. So Ben, initial thoughts on this episode?
Oh, I thought it was action-packed, as you said, explosive. It was just a lot of fun from start to finish. I honestly was very surprised because after the second episode of the show, I was a little worried. I was like, "Oh no, are we going to maybe have another kind of slower paced episode between this and the next one?" But it definitely was not the case, and it was quite the episode and very, very, very good continuation from the last one. And Carl Weathers did a very nice job with this one.
Oh, heck yeah. This is the episode I tweeted out that this episode was basically Jedi Knight Fallen Order. No, I'm confusing two games. This is what happens when you don't get much sleep, apparently. Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast. I got vibes from that game after watching this episode because for a few different reasons here. The first reason is the base. We have a base, and Ben Hart from the Star Wars Underworld called this out a couple weeks ago from the trailer footage, saying this looks like that base from Iradu or whatever that planet was in Rogue One. I don't think it's Iradu because that's Tarkin's planet, but it's that one where the Death Star tech was, where the Galen Erso was. And you look at it in the day on this version, it does look the same. But I also got that feeling from that first level in Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, when you're Kyle Katarn and you're sneaking around this Imperial base, and it looks almost like the same planet. It's got very rocky architecture, or landscape rather, and the base is like on the edge of a cliff. So I'm like, holy crap, this literally feels like that. And the fact that we have these Imperial remnants that are just running amok, and we are going in there, guns blazing, just taking out Stormtrooper after Stormtrooper. And of course, that end, which we're going to talk about, which could lead to implications, and it's pretty much confirmed through audio description on Disney Plus, is that we have Dark Troopers again in Star Wars. In canon, we have Dark Troopers. We're going to spend a whole lot of time about that. We'll save that for later on. But yeah, piggybacking off of what you were saying in regards to feeling a little bit worrisome about that episode 2 of season 2, where it's like, oh no, please don't tell me we're spinning our wheels already. We got a lot to do in 8 episodes, and there's not much happening in this episode. And last week's episode played off with ramifications from episode 2, and then this week pays off even more with ramifications from episode 2. And I will say right off the bat, yeah, episode 3, you had the fallout from the frog people, and you know that, Baby Yoda is being cared by these people, so it made sense that episode 2 had a lot with like the maternal instincts of the frog lady and Baby Yoda and her babies and all that. But in episode 2, you also have the New Republic, and darn it if I didn't look up the pilot's name, but he's actually a really cool actor in real life. This Korean actor that plays the X-Wing pilot, he actually is like part of the 501st and was at many I don't know, probably celebrations, but many conventions before actually being hired by Dave Filoni to do this X-Wing pilot. And we see implications from him at the end of this episode, which is really leading into the larger role of the galaxy, where it's like, oh my gosh, like the New Republic is trying to find out where these Imperials are, but Grief Karga just straight up is like playing it off like it didn't happen. And they recall that he says, oh yeah, the Razor Crest has been tracked here, and he's like, oh, I have nothing to know about it. And remember, Razor Crest, he knows about the Razor Crest, this X-Wing pilot, because he warned the Mandalorian to get those transponders fixed. So it's like great plot lines all around. We are getting multiple angles. The thing that hit me in this episode more than the other episodes, Ben, was the fact that we're getting those different perspectives from characters that aren't in scenes with the Mandalorian. Right off the bat, we get this awesome introduction by Cara Dune. Gina Carano kicks some serious butt in that scene when she's taking out those aqualishes that are in like the actual smelting room of the armor, and you gotta wonder, like, where's the armor? You got this little fire meerkat or whatever the hell that thing is called, but there's no sign of her at all. If she's out there in the galaxy somewhere, I think we're gonna see some kind of confrontation. But anyway, I digress because we get that scene with Cara Dune. Then we have another scene with Cara Dune after Mando leaves, and she's talking to this X-wing pilot that I was just talking about, and he's bringing up her ways of Alderaan and her life back there and how she lost all these people. And then we get a scene with Moff Gideon. So it clearly is panning out that that first season was so laser focused on the Mando, and now we are literally opening the doors on the galaxy. So right off the bat, what do you think about all that? The perspectives of different characters other than the Mando. Do you enjoy that? Would you rather just be laser focused on the Mando? Because that's what worked with season one for a lot of us.
That's what worked for a lot of us in season one. But remember, you know, say let's go back to like how some of the directors, writers, people on the show have discussed. This season might take more a little of a like Game of Thrones type turn, where there's a lot of different little storylines that are flowing throughout the season that'll eventually connect later on this season and in future seasons. So with that, I think that's something maybe fans shouldn't be worried about, because it was done very successfully with Game of Thrones, and it seems to be doing pretty well so far this season with The Mandalorian. Given we've only been 4 episodes in so far, but they're already laying the groundwork. Like, as I said, sure, the second episode of the season wasn't my favorite, but it started to lay little tidbits of groundwork, like the pilots talking about the state of the galaxy. Now you're having the pilot in this episode, so you're getting more and more of the state of the galaxy throughout this season. And as we talk about almost every week, the whole boots on the ground feel, we're not, other than maybe when we see Moff Gideon a little bit, sure, but we're not really seeing like the upper echelon of the Star Wars characters. So, it's not the Luke, Han, and Leia show right now. So, it's really cool seeing like the everyday person, going from town to town or planet to planet, and really getting to see the galaxy for what it is post Return of the Jedi. So that's really a really fresh take, and I'm just loving it, and I'm loving that they're really sticking, really sticking their guns to staying on course with keeping a Western style show, where the episodes, they have their crossover story points and plot points, but still the episodes, you can still have them as almost one-off episodes and they still work pretty well. So that's something that I'm glad they're adamantly sticking to, versus making it just like a normal series television show where it runs episode to episode, the same thing basically flowing. So that's those are really, really good overall just points, and just the way they've developed the show as a whole. And it's nice seeing, not, like we said coming into the season, one of my big concerns for this season was we were going to get over the top, Baby Yoda,
Yep.
cute moment every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And they're not doing that at all. So it's still sprinkled in naturally, which is, still cute and adorable and everything. But they're, as you said, they're focusing on other characters. We have Cara, we have Grief. I mean, the entire action sequence at the end of the episode, the Mandalorian literally just flies away,
Yeah.
and he's out of the picture, and I love that.
Oh, that's
like,
true. I didn't even think
that was
about
one-
that.
yes, that was one of my favorite parts, because honestly, when the Mandalorian at the end, when he flies away to go back to check on the child, like, I honestly thought he was going to be jumped by Imperial stormtroopers or pilots, TIE fighter pilots spotting
Yeah.
him, but he didn't. He literally just flew out of scene, like, oh, okay, we'll catch you later. And then the entire action sequence at the end was just Cara and Grief, which was great. And I loved that aspect of the show, that we're getting the different perspectives on Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, everybody out in the chat room, we got the Lowdown Show saying hi. We have Chris Forsyth. He's also saying, and of course, the jeans guy. Yeah, there's a, if you guys can catch it, there's a quick clip while they're in the base. There's a shot of Grief Karga. If you freeze it at the right moment, you can see some guy in jeans, like his leg is outside of the hall. You can't see his face, but it's one of those funny things in Star Wars where we'll look back, kind of like in Game of Thrones when somebody left behind a Starbucks coffee cup by Daenerys Stormborn. Oh yeah, he's got the exact timestamp at 1855. So there
Yep.
you go. He's also saying he's 501st in regards to the X-wing pilot. I wish I knew the actor's name. I do not. And he's also known as in Canadian TV as Kim's Convenience or something like that.
Kim's Kitchen, I think, is what the show's called. Or
I think
maybe
it's
Kim's
Kim's
Convenience.
Convenience. I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we're not going to see the end of him either. It seems like he might be one of those like minor reoccurring characters throughout the series. Um, oh yeah, and he's also saying the Lowdown Show is saying Mando's starting to take his helmet off a bit. That was really like jarring for me. I was like, oh crap, he's like gonna take his helmet off out of nowhere. And oh, he's just taking a sip of soup. Um, but yeah, getting over to the overall picture of this episode and just seeing how we're constantly getting that momentum, and that momentum carrying the story forward is actually very, very appealing to me, because last week we got the huge reveal of Bo-Katan. We got the huge reveal of like the person that Mando has to go see to bring the child. Like, oh man, they're shifting into overdrive, and now we're getting answers. Some slight, not real answers, but at least acknowledgement that we might be getting the answers to Baby Yoda's purpose and all this. Why the Empire really wants him. And that moment when they're at the base and they're like, oh no, this is not just a regular outpost, this is a lab, and it zooms in. I'm like, I had to like get real close to the monitor, like, is that Snoke? Like, who
Yep.
who is that? Because it's like they're doing experiments. Like, oh my gosh, there's several tanks. What are these things? So let's hear your thoughts, your theories on what's going on in that whole scene. They're apparently using some of Baby Yoda's blood, as we've seen in episode 3 of season 1. They can't use too much of it, or else they will kill Baby Yoda. So they use a little bit of it to do something. So we are going to see what happens there. We got a little bit of a connection issue. Hopefully that ends up fixing itself in a second here. For those in the stream, I will continue to talk about the episode, at least what I can say, until Ben gets back. Let's see. Chris Forsyth, they missed a good opportunity to pull a straw joke. Yeah, with the thing with the helmet. Yeah, I can see that. This is playing very much so Westerns. We got the Lowdown Show. It happened last season, episode 4, Boom Mike. Oh, that's funny. I wonder if they'll ever take that out of the actual show. They'll actually take like they'll paint over it or something. I think HBO did something like that with Game of Thrones. Okay, so we're not sure what is going on with the call. Skype's being a little strange right now. So I'm going to continue. I don't know if you guys could actually see what's going on, but Skype is not being very cooperative right now. So apologize for whatever's happening. Very strange. This has not happened yet. But I think we might be in business. Maybe. Okay, you're back. I'm back on the screen.
We're back.
And your video popped back up, so.
Okay.
Gonna have to do some editing on the fly, which is not the first time I've had to do this, but that's all right. What was the last thing you heard me talk about? Because I was going through the comments just a little bit.
You were just asking me what my thoughts were about like the Snoke clone base.
Oh yeah. So what do you think? What does all this mean? I mean, we still don't really know concretely what's going on, but we know more than we knew before. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, for me, when it comes to, I honestly think we could be going down the Snoke route at some point, because, I played that scene over and over, and if you listen, I don't know if I'm trying to hear it or something, but it kind of sounds like it's the Snoke / Palpatine / like Plagueis
I heard
music.
That. I heard that. I
like,
picked up all that the second time I watched it. Yep.
Yeah, like okay, I just didn't know if I was just hearing things or what
what
it was, but anyways, so like I think that's a really solid chance. But if we would get that, that won't be, the whole revelation of it won't be for quite some time. But one of the most important things I think that came out of that entire sequence on the base really was just the whole fact that, I feel like for a while now, Star Wars has kind of skirted around the prequels to a degree,
Mhm.
under the Disney umbrella, like on screen wise. So, them acknowledging, like saying basically the M count, the midichlorian count, like I was like, oh dang, that's
I
awesome. Like,
I know. I know.
when
It's
they,
yeah, it's kind of
yep,
funny. It's like sorry. It's like they didn't want to fully acknowledge midichlorians, so they're just like, oh, we'll just say M count real quick, so that way people don't get that offended by it.
yep. Yeah, that was really great. I loved that they said M count. There's a lot of questions that came out of that scene for me as well because the little hologram, the recording of Dr. Pershing and all that, him talking about the child being too small or it would kill him, for them taking his blood. And so you have the child, but then you have the volunteer. So like, who's the volunteer is my question, I guess I would say, for
Oh,
that scene. because
yeah.
because they were separate when Dr. Pershing was talking about those. It was separate. He was saying, the child, blah 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 blah, and the volunteer. Well, who's the volunteer? Is it Gideon? Is it one of the Snoke clone people things? Um, like, who would the volunteer be?
Yeah,
And
I
again,
don't know.
why are they drawing blood? Is it actually the Snoke cloning thing, or could it be something entirely different? Because I know before in like Legends, they Darth Sidious, they tried to basically do the same thing with General Grievous. They tried to inject him with blood of like Force users,
Oh.
and it just failed. Yeah, it was in one of I can't think of the exact book. It was in one of the Legends books, but that was basically like kind of the thing Darth Sidious tried to do to General Grievous, and then it just didn't work.
Hmm.
So that's what it kind of made me wonder. Potentially could Gideon be trying to do it to get the Force, or could it be? I don't know. I feel like there's a bunch of different directions, but I do think this episode slammed the door shut on the child being a Yoda clone. I do think
Mhm.
that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Talking a little bit about what you were just saying about theories, possible things. To put in perspective for some of you guys that are watching, the novelization for the Rise of Skywalker gives us the best details on what's going on with Palpatine in that movie, and it is flat out confirmed that they had bodies ready to go for his death in Return of the Jedi. And what happens is when he dies, that blue cloud stuff is actually part of his spirit that like gets transferred to Exegol, and they had a body, like a clone body, ready to be inhabited by his soul, basically. And unfortunately, fortunately for the galaxy, but unfortunately for him, his force ability is just so strong it deteriorates the bodies, and they constantly have to. It sounds like every couple, who knows how long, but he has to go through multiple bodies, clone bodies, to keep his spirit going because he says he's all of the Sith. Like his dark side is basically multiplied of all the Force users in the past, is what I gather. So it just can't be contained in a clone body. So maybe this is one of the offshoot experiments on like, oh, if they can make like a clone body with the Force sensitive nature of Baby Yoda's character, maybe that'll like prevent it from being the body from being broken down. But then you have the Snoke angle too, and we don't know anything about Snoke, his creation, anything other than we've seen him in test tubes. So maybe this is a preliminary version of Snoke because we know Snoke was around for years. We know Snoke was goading Ben Solo. We know this is 5 years after the events of the of Return of the Jedi. So Ben Solo would be basically like maybe 4 or 5 years old, which we're still not sure when he got into the picture of things, but you got to think that maybe they were experimenting on that as well. And the Lowdown show is confirming that that is definitely the Snoke theme. So either way, there's some seriously weird dark side stuff going on in this place. But it was one of those things where it was unexpected because on the outlook of this episode, called The Siege. Like, great, we got Carl Weathers. And by the way, Carl Weathers did an excellent job on this episode. I believe he is like the first. Yeah, he's definitely. Wait, no, he isn't. I was going to say he's the first actor from the show that directed an episode, but I am wrong with that because we have Taika Waititi that was playing the character of IG 11. But nonetheless, I was very happy to see how well Carl Weathers handled maybe like the most action heavy episode of the series. And it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna go attack this Imperial outpost. It's like, oh great, this is gonna be a great, like, real fun episode. And it's like, oh dang, this is deeper than a fun episode. They just like undid the corkscrew on the bottle of mysteries just a little bit here in this episode.
Oh yeah, they definitely did. It was just from start to finish. I was really engaged. I mean, even setting the action stuff aside, the beginning of the episode was really charming. Baby, the child going to the little school that Kara and
Oh
Grief have set
man.
up, and the kids were basically making fun of him, because he wasn't a human. So he was kind of getting made fun of. It seemed like, or they were like kind of snickering at him, and he wanted one of their macaroons, and he basically just used the force to take it from him and get his snack. So that was a good little charming moment. Again, like I was saying, it wasn't too cute. We weren't getting that throughout the entire episode. I mean, well, even actually to rewind a little bit further, you know Baby Yoda doing, working on the Razor Crest
Oh,
where
that
he
was so
did,
great.
like, with he's crossing wires. He's like, no, red one there, blue one there, and
Ah.
he's like, huh, and then puts them down and it zaps everything. And and it's hilarious, like the puff of smoke from Baby Yoda, and he's
Oh
just
my
standing there staring
gosh.
like, whoa. um
I freaking love that. That reminded me of like back when I used to like be real little, like working with my dad on different projects around the house and stuff. And he'd be like, "That one goes there." I'd be like, "Here? No, there." I'd be like,
mhm.
that gave me flashbacks to working with him on different things. I love that moment. Yeah, there's a lot of good Baby Yoda moments in this episode. Like you said, the school, dealing with all of that. But before we change topics too much, we do have
Oh
some
yeah.
activity going on in the chat. Some really good points that are coming up in the chat with Lowdown Show and Chris Forsyth. Uh, we do say that Chris is saying, I'm calling it Palps, but that seems to be too on the nose for the way this show goes. Yeah, I agree. Palpatine's son could be Volunteer. So we do know that Palpatine had a son. He is some kind of, I don't know if he's an experiment. He is a clone of Palpatine, right? His son
Yeah.
is a clone of Palpatine, kind of like how
Yep.
Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett, like an unaltered version of himself, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, he's an unaltered version. Well, he's a direct clone of Palpatine, but he's defunct because he can't use the Force.
Oh.
Is that was the big issue Palpatine had. That's pretty much why he cast out his his son slash clone of himself, because he couldn't really transfer his spirit into his body, because from my understanding, basically Palpatine, like the defunct form of him, wasn't able to like tap into the Force basically. And that's why basically he cast him aside, and then we get the whole
Oh.
thing with Rey. but
Yeah.
that's pretty much why that happens with Palps. And then yeah, so I think there's a potential it could be Palpatine's son, or like you were saying, Chris, it could just be like maybe almost the early versions of what leads up to that. Because at this yeah, at this moment, I guess in the timeline it would fit though, because right around this time period, or a few years from now, Rey would be being born, because she was about 20 years old or so in Force Awakens. So maybe we got another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years after this show. So there's a potential, maybe right now, the person that's getting experimented on, this is the stage in canon maybe where Palpatine's son's getting experimented on. Then Palpatine maybe finds out that he's like defunct, and that's when he
Oh.
gets thrown aside, and then
Oh.
it leads to Rey,
Oh my
possibly.
gosh, can you imagine if the show actually linked that heavily into Rey's lineage? That'd be, and they somehow like make it better, like because that's a big
Yeah,
issue for a lot of people with Rise of Skywalkers. They just don't buy that Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine. But if they can somehow make the Mandalorian like the way the Clone Wars strengthened the prequels, if the Mandalorian can somehow strengthen the sequel trilogy, I don't want to
that's
put too
my
many bets on that, but that'd be interesting.
that's that's honestly my theory. I I will die on that hill. I think a lot of the projects that are going to be coming out under the Disney umbrella for the live action shows, I think they'll, other than the Obi-Wan show, but the shows that take place between 6 and 7, I bet you they're going to be thinking in the same format of, hey, this worked out for George Lucas with the prequels. You know, he made the Clone Wars and then it strengthened the prequels. I think there's a really solid chance that they're going to do that with these as well to kind of strengthen the sequels.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It's like they got nothing to lose. They could seriously pull this off if they do it right. If they do it right, don't make it too forced. Put some information in there, but just don't beat us over the head with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, talking a little bit more about the school. I want to dive into that because that's the first time in live action we're seeing a school. So that was pretty neat. Hearing about like all these different terms and stuff, the Hydian Way and the mall and stuff like hearing all these like really geeky inner baseball terms in Star Wars. I was like, oh, this is great, but it's just really neat seeing that kind of format. Was this the same play? Was this actually the same building that the Bounty Guild was in before?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why, because when Den walks up, I think Den might say it, or it might be Kara or Grief. It's one of the three. They mention about how the place has changed since he.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it was Kara. I think she said, the place has changed since the last time you were here, and I think that's literally why, is because that was the exact place where the Bounty Guild was set up. And it's ironic because they go from it being a bounty guild, it's being such like a violent type of uh, career path in the Star Wars universe, to a school. So it's really ironic, like just seeing that develop, and it shows, it definitely shows that we've had some sort of a time jump between season 1 and 2.
Oh yeah. Definitely with everything going on. I mean, Grief Karga's appearance definitely looks a lot different with his facial hair, and just the way they cleaned up the whole town, the village, whatever you want to call it. I like how they drastically show the difference of like this place that was run down, had stormtroopers, just had scum everywhere. Now it's like there's just like normal people walking through the streets. Like this is what happens when you actually do it right. And now you have Cara Dune, who's actually the marshal, so our second marshal for this season. So we're seeing how she's dealing with everything. She's going out there beating down the scum, giving back to the people. I thought that was really admirable how she was, taking out the aqualishes and like, oh, we got to return this back to the rightful owners. And she's not plundering for herself. She's going out there, risking her life for the people to give back to the people. I thought that was really admirable.
Oh yeah, for sure. She's definitely one of the strongest side characters of the show. I mean, Gina Carano plays her really well, and I'm really glad. I'm just really, really happy about this episode in general, the way they focused on her and Grief. I think it was much needed because they, I feel like they're almost marketed as the Mandalorian sidekicks,
Yep.
but we really haven't seen them very much, honestly, overall. So it's like, if you're going to market them as his kind of sidekicks, they need to be in the show a little more. And it was really good that they made this episode focused on Grief and Kara, and it was just a nice, like, refreshing tone, really.
Yeah. Now, thinking about the Bounty Hunters Guild, since they're not on Navarro, what is the um like where are they in the galaxy? Are there the bounty hunter guilds? Are they still out there? I mean, I want to know what's going on with the bounty hunters in general.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like there's definitely something going on because at the beginning of the second episode, those people, those
Yeah.
presuming, I would say, bounty hunters jumped the Mandalorian, and the one guy literally says that, grab the child. So, it makes me think there's potentially another bounty hunters guild. Maybe someone took it over, and is running it now that it's kind of disbanded on Navarro.
Mm-hmm. 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 A great character that I call the character great because I literally did a 180 on this character from episode one. One of the first things we see with the Mandalorian is a character called Mithril, this blue guy that is called like a polywag or something. I think they say his species name in this
Yep.
episode. I hated this character when I first seen him because it was like the first like dialogue interchange we have in the show pretty much. And I was like, "Oh god, is this what the show is going to be about? Like this freaking guy who's trying to be a comedy act and there's like this stone-faced Mandalorian killer that's not saying a word like, oh god, this show's not off to a good start." And well, by the end of the episode, obviously I was like, "Okay, that was just a stupid thought I had because this show is amazing." But they bring this character back by played by Horatio Sands, and I freaking love this character in this episode. I don't know about you, but I thought the comedy between him and Grief, that going back and forth of Grief saying, "I'll cut you another 50 years off your sentence," and he's like so impatient with him. Like when he's going to like, there's we're gonna talk about like all the New Hope vibes in this episode, but like he's going to like the like regulator of the coolant, and he's like going over to the edge, and he's like, guardrails, and he's like, move, 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 and
Yep.
it was just hilarious, man. I loved that this character was in there, and I had a blast with him.
Oh yeah, I loved it. Like you said, the guardrails comment, that was hilarious because again, it's really nice the way, as we said last week, Favreau and Filoni are including everybody. For general audience members, they could see that as, oh, haha, yeah, no guardrails. But like for us hardcore Star Wars fans, we're like, oh, that's always the running joke about the Empire. So that was really great. And then, like you said, I at first wasn't sure about Mithril in the beginning of the whole show, and then I flipped my opinion around. I still, personally, my only little nitpick about him is I guess everybody in the Star Wars galaxy can speak basic, English basically, but I do kind of wish like aliens, I kind of wish he would speak in alien, like, in just an alien voice versus, in basic. So that's kind of my only nitpick on him, but overall, like his character, worked really well in this episode. Again, it was really nice, like little comedic relief between him and Grief
Hmm.
throughout the whole sequence. I thought that was really well done. And then even just another little Easter egg too, when he says like, "I'm still blind in my right eye from the carbonite freezing,"
Yes.
that's a kind of like little nod to episode 6 with Han coming out of
Yeah,
the
it's like
carbonite
carbonite
and not being
freezing.
able to
He's
see.
perfect hibernation, and he's coming out of being blind. Like that's awesome.
Yep.
And was there any other nods to A New Hope that you seen in this episode?
Um, I'm not sure.
I thought there
Honestly, I
was one
mean,
other one in there. I thought there was one other one in there. I'm trying to think about it.
hmm,
I mean, just like the whole whenever you're in a base running around with like three people shooting stormtroopers, it always brings back memories of A New Hope when Han and Chewie and Luke and Leia are just running around halls of the Death Star, like that enclosed territory. That
yep.
always like sparks that nostalgia feeling for me. The fact that they're on a land speeder, just flying, they're just going to the mission. That kind of gave me vibes of like Ben Kenobi and everybody on the land speeder going to Maz Eisley. So there's little nods like that are great for the fans to really see. The connections. Like it's all one universe. There's still things out there that connect back to things we've seen a long, long time ago.
Oh, actually, I know the connection that you were thinking of. There was one other. Um, so when after they wrap up the stuff that's going on inside the base after the Mandalorian flies off, when Kara and Grief, are driving away and they're fighting back, because the TIE fighters, they take off and they're chasing Kara and Grief. I feel like if you, I think the scope of the ship from say, uh, from Kara and Grief's speeder, as well as the Mandalorian's point of view when he flies in at the end with the Razor Crest, the scope went the whole locking on thing. I feel like the animation and stuff, it looked exactly like what
Yep.
was in A New Hope.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I thought that was a really cool little nod, and it's just great seeing Tie Fighters. Like Tie Fighters are always one of my
Oh.
favorite ships in Star Wars. I just think they're so cool. The noise, the just everything about them, and it's cool that in Star Wars it's almost a little like plot hole type thing. Not plot hole, but it makes TIE fighters more vulnerable because they're not as shielded.
Mm-hmm.
So the people on the ground, like Kara and Grief, they can actually fight back against them, even though they're big vehicles. So,
Yeah,
so I think that's a really cool little thing. Uh, and then that whole sequence with Kara and Grief after the base was awesome.
let's talk
You know,
about that. Yeah.
like it was amazing. And then I just feel like I don't know. I feel like I've seen it out of so many different action movies, maybe even Indiana Jones, like things. So when Kara and Grief are driving the speeder, and when they go flying like over the cliff, and they're like, and like they're screaming, you can hear you see the speeder falling off the cliff, but you don't really see them. I feel like that's a trope that's like thrown into different things, different movies or things when cars drive off cliffs and all that. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And it was just a lot of fun, that entire sequence at the base.
Yeah, so we have the Imperial troop transport. That was the good old Kenner toy that never was actually part of any of the movies. And they are using that liberally when it comes to Star Wars recently. Filoni put it in Star Wars Rebels. That was the first time we've seen it in canon. And now we see it in episode 8 of season 1. I I don't know if I don't think it's this exact version, but this version looks like a souped up version. But I love how they go over the cliff, and the speeder bikes were just super cool. Like, talk about seeing things that remind us of other things but are completely different. Like, we know how awesome that scene from Return of the Jedi, how groundbreaking that was at the time for visual effects of making these speeder bikes look like they're actually going like 200 miles an hour through a forest. And now we're actually seeing them play around with altitude, flying off of an object like there's some kind of moto. It reminded me a lot of like motocross, in our
Yep.
reality. And the fact that they're not even perfect at doing it, and two of them just kill each other, like crashing into each other. Like, wait a minute, I thought these guys were trained. What the heck is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you think about it, maybe the guys that were left back at the base, they're more like the type of stormtroopers that are like Finn, more janitorial type, like, people just working versus the actual trained, scout troopers, or the actual trained like biking troopers. Like maybe that could be a reason. Or then again, could be just some of the Star Wars, like, like head scratching things, not head scratching in a bad way, but like, that's interesting, or that's funny, like type of thing. Um, but yeah, again, the speeder bikes, soon as you see them flying and just the camera angles, the shots,
Ah,
it all just reminded me of Episode 6
mm-hmm.
and Episode 6 is in Return of the Jedi, Episode 6. And I just thought it was just really, really well done. And yeah, I get more and more impressed each week, knowing this is just a show that has like, the budget for each episode's like 10 or 15 million. It's like these are almost like mini movies.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's
Oh
it's so
yeah.
impressive.
We are so spoiled with this show right now. It's unbelievable. I do not miss, let me tell you, I do not miss that we don't have a damn movie this year, because I'm
Yep.
getting mini movies every week for 8 weeks straight. And that's saying a lot. I mean, this is coming from the guy that would go to the midnight release of every single Star Wars movie and possible. And I'm sitting over here saying, I am satisfied with what we are getting right now. If we get movies later down the road, great. But right now, I'm satisfied as a Star Wars fan, more so than I've been satisfied for the damn movies. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to say right here, like, I'm enjoying The Mandalorian probably more than the sequel trilogy. Gotta say it. Like, this is everything that fans of the Legends, fans of EU, fans of the current canon are getting, things they've wanted to see in live action. Whereas the sequel trilogy, sort of played it a little safe in regards to just including things that we've seen already, just make them shinier, essentially. Um, but I really don't want to
Well,
get into that tonight. I could spend the whole video talking about that. I do want to go back into the comments here because your cousin Keegan Maynard, he was
yep.
talking about, we also get to see how the TIE fighters sit when they are on the ground, the wings bent like 45-degree angles. So I have a theory that I just came up when I read this comment by your cousin. I think they're designed like that because they're the Remnant Empire. They do not have the TIE fighters in the mass amounts and quantities that they've had when they are the dominant force in the galaxy. They are on the run. They have to have their ships integrated into their kind of tactics. So they're not using full-size Star Destroyers anymore. They got to be parked on the ground, which means the people that pilot these things have to get on the ground into the TIE fighters very quickly. So it would be a little bit crazy to have like the TIE fighters like 12 feet off the ground when they're not sitting in the way they are in The Mandalorian,
Yep.
because they have to rush to their ships. They're the underdog. They got to get access to their ships quickly. So if they're lower to the ground, they don't need a ladder. They can just straight up jump into the thing and get going. So I believe that's why they're probably designed like that. I believe there's an actual name for these TIE fighters, like the TIE fighter outriggers or outrunners or something like that. I believe they have an actual name.
Yeah, I think it's something along those lines, like outriggers or outrunners. But it's really cool. As my cousin pointed out, it's interesting seeing the different vehicles. I mean, that was one of my things from the first season. It's so cool seeing. I mean, heck, even from the sequel trilogy, it's cool seeing the TIE fighters up close. Like, in the original trilogy, you mainly saw them from far
Oh
away from
yeah.
outside shots, but you're really seeing TIE fighters, speeders, everything up close and personal, which it makes it really interesting. Just you're actually getting to see the actual designs of them compared to just, far away shots and space flight.
Yeah, I remember the other shot that's very evocative from A New Hope, and heck, how could I not mention this? The very first shot in A New Hope is mimicked in the very last shot of this episode, and that is with our first live action appearance of a freaking Arquitens light cruiser in The Mandalorian. I'm not sure if it's the flagship of Moff Gideon. Maybe he's just visiting this ship, just checking out the different unique things that are on this ship. But I definitely got to talk about this because this is the first time we're getting an acknowledgement that Moff Gideon has mobile transport and he is armed to the teeth. He's got an entire uh, command of a vessel with multiple Imperials, officers, and everything. It's unbelievable that 5 years after the fact that we think the Empire is destroyed, we are getting like fleets of Imperials that are out there in the unknown regions or wherever they are, they're in the outer rim. And again, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode with the X-wing guy, and he's saying like, we think there might be something bad out there, but we're not known for sure because all of our funds are basically dedicated to the core, whereas they're not paying attention to the outer rim, and things are gonna start going outside of their favor a little bit. But what was your first reaction to seeing an Arquitens light cruiser in Star Wars The Mandalorian?
I thought that was awesome. Like, again, like you said, it just shows how armed Moff Gideon really is. Because after Episode 6, and even with the sequel trilogy, it seemed like the Empire is really scattered. But now, maybe it's not. Maybe it's more banded together. Like there's more fleets coming, things like that, and just the implications that come from it. We have potential. Like you said, Gideon's inspecting. So if he's inspecting, that means this isn't his flagship. Then where's his flagship?
Yeah, I think
And
he
you
could
could.
just have a full-fledged Star Destroyer, probably. They're tricking us thinking that this is his ship, but I don't think it is.
Yep, I don't think so either. I think we're gonna get a full-fledged Star Destroyer, and I think whenever we do get that, we are gonna get straight up vibes from like that, as in, it'll be similar to like Darth Vader walking up to like the bridge and everything. I think we're gonna get those type of shots at some point in this show of like Gideon walking up to the bridge, looking over his Imperial officers and things like that. I thought that was really awesome. And also, don't get me wrong, I was talking to my cousin about this. I was kind of hoping that at the end, when Gideon talked to that female officer, I was kind of hoping he would have said, thank you, Admiral Ray Sloan or something, um, just because it would have been a good little tie-in, but they didn't do that. So I was like, aw. Um, but I'm becoming a greedy Star Wars fan. But I just think it's really cool seeing the Empire more becoming organized, and I think it's setting up, as we talked about, setting up a future conflict. There's a big potential of something big's coming. I mean, we're not going to keep having all these shots of, the Empire, shots of, we're not going to have, these rebel pilots keep popping in for no reason. This is all put into the show for one
This is
reason or
gonna be
another.
big.
And then, Bo-Katan, hunting Gideon down, all of these little things, it's all leading up to a massive conflict at some point.
Yeah, I think there could be a really big battle. The more of these factions getting tied in, right? Like you have the smugglers and the scoundrels of the galaxy that are being banded up by the Mandalorian. But then you have the Mandalorians themselves, like you said, Bo-Katan. And then we're gonna get the New Republic. So we're gonna have like 3 or 4 factions possibly going head to head all at once. Like this is gonna be huge. And I think maybe the finale episode is gonna have that. I will mention quickly, I looked through the trailer as I do every week after I watch the episode to see, hey, what did I see in the episode? What do we have yet to see? I put this out on Twitter. Guess what, guys? We're halfway through the series or the season. We've seen everything in the trailer already. They're hiding so much from us, it's not even funny. They're
Yep, we're
hiding half
done.
of the entire season from us. There's some big that's going to happen. There might be a full-size fleet battle. There might be a lightsaber battle. There's going to be a Ahsoka Tano, and I guarantee she's not going to be just sitting around doing exposition. She's going to be getting heavy knee action. And of course, we know that probably because there's a freaking tracking device on the Razor Crest. I want to talk about that. So the Imperials at this point, the Imperial remnants are so connected to everything in the galaxy that they have spies all across the galaxy keeping tabs on everyone. And that includes hiring even somebody on Navarro, this Mimbanese. And I got to give a shout out to whoever's throwing in the different species in the show. I applaud you for throwing in a person from Mimban in the show, because we had a Mimban pilot in Star Wars Squadrons, and I was ecstatic when I seen that. So there we go. I love getting these solo characters and stuff like that. But I mean, come on, like this reminds me of like something from like Daredevil with Kingpin having his people in the police forces and all over the city of New York as seeds to be planted to sow dissent in the city. I think the same thing could happen here. There's going to be all sorts of sympathizers for the Empire. There's going to be people that had a lot of money that was involved with the Empire, and when they supposedly fell, they're not going to let that go by easy for them, and they're going to try to support whoever is going to try to bring back the Empire. If you guys have read Star Wars Bloodline, it takes place 5 years before The Force Awakens, so it's on the other side of the gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, but there is the centralists and there's the populists. The centralist part of the government of New Republic are the people that sort of support the First Order, or at least the beginnings of the First Order. So you're going to have the people that are always going to be supporting the radicals, So that got me really hyped up when I seen that there's actually people that are dug in deep in the pockets of the Empire, or whatever
Oh
they're
yeah,
called.
for sure. I mean, again, we put our own earthly impressions onto Star Wars. We're viewing the Empire as bad. What if, the people supporting the Empire, they view it as good, like a sense of security? I mean, look at the first episode of this season. Soon as the Empire was gone, boom, you had raiders come in and, just raid the entire town where Cobb Vanth was. So maybe those townspeople in that town, maybe they wanted the Empire to be there because without the Empire, you're just basically losing your full security. So I feel like there's potential. Some of the characters we may see, like just side characters, like you said, like the Man, like all those type of characters, some of them could be supporting the Empire just because of that. Like they could view them like, should we believe this? Like in the Star Wars galaxy, for example, what if, some people may have viewed the rebels almost like terrorists, like they overthrew the government, like you know and for example, like say if I was born during the era of the Empire and I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s, like maybe I grew up with the Empire as the government, like I could see the rebellion as like, whoa, like these guys are extremists, like why are they overthrowing my government?
Yeah.
So I think that's a potential interesting plot point, just because it shows at this stage in the galaxy that everybody's not in full support of the rebellion. Like even even in the last episode, or heck, even in this episode, you know, the subtle comments made about, oh, like, you know, the rebellions, you know, the Empire couldn't control it out here. Why could the
Oh yeah.
rebellion,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
those type of little comments shows that, you know, the rebellion isn't just, it isn't perfect. You know, it isn't a perfect form of government. So
Mm-mm.
it's very interesting just to see the implications for that, because I think there also could be a point, maybe once we get to that big battle, maybe the rebellion doesn't help out. Maybe they just kind of stay back and, you know, let whatever happens in the outer rim happen in the outer rim, and maybe they don't help out with the conflict, because, you know, the pilot, you know, he was talking about like the people in the core worlds not believing what's going on out here. So, you know, maybe the people, like the officials in the core worlds, maybe they're just, you know, almost being like arrogant, like, no, we defeated the Empire, like we don't need to worry about the outer rim.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like you said, the real world stuff. It's always been in Star Wars. There's always been implications that relate to what we're dealing with in our reality. So that is again making us such an interesting part of Star Wars right now. This is the stories that I always kind of wanted to learn about. And when The Mandalorian was first developed and announced, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a great bounty hunter story. And here we are talking about the Empire and how they're coming back from the ashes and about how these people are dealing with it in this way. And it's like, wow, we're only 2 seasons into the show and it is so far surpassed what I expected from it. It's insane.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's been quite a ride. And then, you know, as you said, like initially with your first point you brought up about the whole Empire and everything, you know, this is all leading to a big conflict. We could be getting something big in this coming episode, this week, because, you know, Din unknowingly is bringing Moff Gideon and the whole Empire right to
Yep.
Ahsoka's front door.
I know.
Like that's the thing that's,
Dude.
you know, almost getting me. I'm getting very anxious about this coming episode. I'm not gonna lie, like, because Den is literally bringing everybody, and you know, Gideon doesn't know about Ahsoka. I mean, presumably, but he doesn't know about Ahsoka. You know, he's just coming after the child, and you know, his big target. He's been obsessed with getting the child. So I feel like he's not going to just send one little battalion of TIE fighters to go and get it. I think he's going to be there in person, and we're going to be getting, you know, full fledged, you know, Gideon coming after him. I mean, I feel like if I had to put a percentage chance, I think it's at least a 50% chance we're going to get a classic Imperial shuttle landing with Gideon walking out like ominously like the Emperor, like Vader.
Hmm.
I think there's a 50-60% chance we could get that when he lands on the planet. Um and I think it's going to be interesting just to see, like, because throughout this coming episode, you know, that's what we'll be thinking about, like, okay, when's the Empire getting here?
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
it's coming.
There's rumors out there. I'm not sure how true they can be. The episode's gonna be 58 minutes long.
Yep, I saw that.
That's
58
insane.
minutes.
That's at
Yep.
least like 55 minutes of actual like screen time because you know you got to subtract like 4 minutes from the end credits and all that stuff. But a 55-minute Star Wars episode, like I said, there's not gonna be people just standing around talking. There's gonna be some serious stuff going down if it's gonna be a 55-minute episode. There's just no
Oh,
way around it.
oh yeah, for sure. I think we I think we're gonna have quite the tree. I think it could be potentially a very emotional ride for Star Wars fans, to say the least.
Oh, I'm probably gonna start bawling when Ahsoka shows up. There's
Yeah.
no
Oh
way
yeah.
around it. I'm gonna just start the floodgates open and I'm gonna just be sitting there.
Oh yeah. My cousin and my best friend, everybody I talk to is so hyped up about Ahsoka coming. And part of that though, part of that, you know, this is almost like my Star Wars therapy session, I guess, for the week. I think I'm getting a little nervous for this coming episode, just because hear me out on this. I was talking to my cousin about this earlier today. Okay, so Dr. Pershing in this episode, in chapter 12, Dr. Pershing's talking about, the child not having enough blood, being too small, for, their experiments and that sort of thing. So like, I'm really, really nervous that what if, Gideon sees Ahsoka use the Force or something, and then he thinks, oh, that's a big humanoid type person. Why don't we just get her instead of the child? So I'm I'm really nervous about this coming episode because we're introducing Ahsoka, and then her voice is in episode 9. Like, sure, she by the time episode 9 comes around, she could have just died of old
Oh,
age.
I think I know what you're getting at.
But think about the implications, the big, almost uh like like what the heck moment it would be. What if, like, I don't like saying this, but what if, so this is my potential theory. I think we have a couple theories for this coming week. One, we could have Ahsoka. I think there's a chance, she could meet up with Din, and then she could agree to train the child or take the child, and then we get to the Empire showing up, and maybe she has to sacrifice herself to let them escape. And you know think about how crazy it would be if, like, Ahsoka's blood was what brought Palpatine back. Like,
Oh God.
like that. See, I think there's a potential for something like that just because of Dr. Pershing saying, the child's too small, and, or it'd kill him. So that's what makes me super nervous about Ahsoka there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I get
I
it.
don't know.
I get it, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of the general audience that has no idea who Ahsoka Tano is. You build all the way up to this character, you show this character, and in the same episode she's dead. It's like, wait a minute. We don't even know who this character is. They show up in this episode and they're dead, and we're supposed to care about them. Like, I don't
That's
know if they would do that for the general audience, just for the well-being of the hardcore fans out there. Like Dave Filoni, he
yeah.
might be responsible for some mental breakdowns over the couple days the episode airs. I
Oh yeah.
don't know if he wants that kind of responsibility on his shoulders, if like the whole fandom isn't just absolute despair for like a weekend. Like
Now,
I could see them killing her off eventually, but not the first episode she appears in. I think they would just be doing the fans dirty on that one by a long
oh
stretch.
yeah. Well, and my only thing with that, I'm actually leaning now more towards. I think if I had to put a bet on it, I think she will survive. But also, I just think, I don't know. I feel like Dave Filoni, after watching interviews with him, I feel like he's so similar to George Lucas. Like, couldn't you picture him after the season, talking about like Ahsoka's Jedi arc coming to a full circle, blah blah blah. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I could see him sitting down saying that. But I don't know. I really think we have a chance of, what if, here's another idea maybe. What if everything goes well, and then potentially, what if Din gives the child to Ahsoka and she leaves, and that is kind of your uh like your plot device or whatever, to bring the general audience members and announce, an Ahsoka show or a live action type
Yeah, I
Rebel
think
show.
that'll happen.
I
That's
think
been in the
there's a
works for a
solid
while.
chance of that.
That's been in a while. Like, I could see them like on that Monday. They do the Mando Mondays every Monday. I could see them like that Monday being like, and for those of you that really enjoyed seeing Ahsoka, want to see more of her, we're announcing an 8-episode miniseries debuting in 2022 or something like that. You want to follow the child? Then we could follow the Ahsoka Tano show.
Yep.
Something like
I
that. That'll be like the first spinoff. I do want to get to some of the comments. We've gotten some really good comments in here.
Yep.
So we have Chris Forsyth. I'm hardcore going with Ahsoka dying, even though I don't want it. It would work with the whole storyline. Yeah, I think it would work, but like I said, I think it's too premature. I think that give it another season. If she's in season 3, maybe that would be the time to do it. Joel Davis is also saying, considering that he didn't kill, and he's referring to Dave Filoni, considering that he didn't kill off Ahsoka when she fought Vader, I can't see Dave doing it in Mando. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, if they're gonna do it, they would have done it there because Anakin being her former
Master.
master, like what more poetic way to go out than that? And do you think Gideon can possibly kill Ahsoka? And do you think she deserves to be getting killed by just some random stormtroopers? Like hell no. Like that's not that's not a good honorable death for her. Like that's I don't know.
Now, another thing too to bring up about this episode, the title, reportedly the title's The Jedi.
But she's
What
not a
if the
Jedi.
No, yeah, exactly. This what I'm getting to. So what if now, I mean, this is big time playing with house money here, but she what if this whole thing, the title of the Jedi is a red herring? What if Mando goes and meets her and then she's like, "Hey, actually the real Jedi you need to find who's an
Is
actual
Luke.
Jedi still is this guy well, no, I don't think Luke. What if she
Really?
says what if she says my friend Ezra Bridger and then
What?
boom, there's because I think I think Luke, I don't know, you have a potential. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see Luke. I would love to see Sebastian Stan play Luke actually at
Yeah.
this point. But my thing is I think they're still a little too gun shy after the Solo thing, like the not having Harrison Ford, recasting Harrison Ford. I don't know if they would do that just yet. So like what would be a better way to maybe introduce the Rebels crew live action? What if the Jedi is Ezra? Um, what do you think about that? You think there's a potential maybe Ezra could be this Jedi?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think that they could open up a whole new era of a whole new story arc for sure. Obviously, a new story arc, but like really blow the doors open on Legends material because if you bring in him, you pretty much got to bring in Grand Admiral Thrawn, which would mean we are getting Heir of the Empire 2.0 in canon.
Yep.
Unless that happened already, right? Like you could have like Moff Gideon teaming up with Thrawn and having this massive fleet of enemies. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess Ezra Bridger would be a person. There's a lot of Jedi. You could have Cal Kestis come back. He could be a Jedi that would train him. But I still got to go with my gut feeling. When I first, heard that last episode, Armor talking about the Jedi, the sorcerers, I instantly thought about Luke because he is the last of the Jedi. Like Yoda said in Return of the Jedi, you are the last of the Jedi, will you be? I'm going right off of that. Like, I guess I just want to see Luke Skywalker so badly again.
Oh yeah, like me, don't get me wrong, Ezra would be cool, but seeing Luke in live action, and if they would do, and let's just say they do bring in Sebastian Stan, that means we'd have limitless possibilities for Luke Skywalker content because, we would have a young Luke Skywalker then. So I would love to see that. And then also talking about potential maybe cameos or things for this coming episode, I think there's a good chance we see some more of the Rebels crew. Like, I think there's, I think I'd give it a solid 40% chance, maybe Captain Rex,
Yeah.
or I think there's a solid 40% chance we're going to see Captain Rex in this coming episode.
Can you imagine like they walk up on I can like picture this in my mind because they've given us very very few details to go through. So just walk with me here for a minute. They're
Yep.
on this forest planet of Corvus, right? I think that was the name of the planet.
Corvus. Yep.
I'm thinking of something that almost looks like the planet from Rise of Skywalker, where they have the base, like a very lush, like kind of forest and stuff. And Mando's walking up, and there is Ahsoka Tano. Her back is facing him, and then like off to the left or something, you have like Captain Rex, who's just like walking around in the background. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yep. I could 100% see that. I think there's definitely a chance Captain Rex, because I mean they have Tamara Morrison under contract. Why wouldn't they say, "Hey, while we're paying you, shoot these other scenes for us, please?" So, I think there's definitely a chance that we could see Captain Rex, and then even I really like I was messaging you earlier earlier in the week. What if what if they do a big nod to the fans? Like, what if Ahsoka's first thing she says when he walks up with the child is like, "Oh, he's so cute. He looks like a baby Yoda or something." What if because, Ahsoka's character, she's not, she's serious, but she's not ultra serious. Like she's not like Luke, for example, or Qui-Gon or whoever. She has more of like a playful attitude. So I could see her saying something like that. And, how great would that be for like a nod to the fans who've all said Baby Yoda for so long?
Oh my gosh. That'd be so funny because I don't know if that'll happen though, just because of the way that John Favreau is so protective of the actual name. Like, apparently
Yep.
he got mad at Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, for
Yep.
saying Baby Yoda. He's like, don't call him that.
Yep.
I do want to finish off this episode by I'd be crazy if I didn't mention that last scene, Moff Gideon in this containment area with these black clad figures hoisted up on these harnesses, looking like they're about to be dropped down, like some drop ship soldiers or something like that. Now, my initial thought was, oh, are these dark troopers? And apparently I was right because the audio description claims that they're dark troopers. But dark troopers, I believe they're first in Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast 2, which is, again, why I said, oh, this episode really gives me those vibes on multiple levels. They have, like, some kind of harness, and I think actually me and Chris were talking about this on Facebook, me and Chris Forsyth, about they have like some control thing on their chest. So I'm like almost thinking like, are they droids? Because like, why are they like connected
Well,
up to the wall like that? They almost like, are they in power mode or something?
well, also like bouncing off your thing, off the Dark Troopers coming out of the video games. They were also in the very first Star Wars Battlefront 1, like the very
Oh,
first Star Wars Battlefront game. That was the special class for the Empire you could play as. And then, they were in different other iterations of, former Legends books. And there were a few different iterations from what I remember from some of the books and old comics from back in the day. The Dark Troopers, one iteration was it was basically a beefed up super battle droid, pretty much.
yep.
It was a pure droid. That was one iteration where it was a pure droid. And then the
That one
other
was in Star
iteration,
Wars Rebels too. That one.
yep, yep. That was
Thrawn
in
was doing hand to hand combat, and then there's another episode where they were like running from them or something.
Yep. So Thrawn was fighting them, and then the other iteration too. I remember it was from one of the books. It was basically they're basically like, clone droid hybrid
Mm-hmm.
type troopers. So I think though with both of those points in mind, these are definitely the pure droid kinds because why would you have a hybrid trooper like hanging up? So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the droid kinds, which it's going to be interesting. And one thing though, I hope and pray, in Star Wars fashion, I hope that these are not just cool background things to sell merchandise and then, we don't see them in action. Um,
Oh
because, we've
God,
had
no.
so many different cool troopers, that don't really do much. So I think, but I mean, I say that like jokingly, but I really do think though that we're going to get them in action because, Filoni and Favreau, they just really, I think, know, those type of little ins and outs of Star Wars. And, how cool would it be to see Dark Troopers, in action, like live action?
Oh
Um,
man. I am such a sucker when it comes to like the mysterious like Imperial experiments and everything. Like I'm still loving the details that we're getting almost 5 years after the fact that Rogue One came out, and we're still learning more about the Death Troopers. Like when they first came out, there was so much mystery. Are they zombies under the helmet? Why are they talking in garbled communication? What's going on with them? And I was just reading in From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back. I'll have my review of that book on the channel later this week. There is a mention of like the Death Troopers. One of the characters was like working out like ridiculously long amounts every day because he wanted to be accepted into the Death Trooper program, and to be accepted you have to have like the perfect physique to be able to better control the augmentations that they implant inside the specimens. So you got to have a really good solid body and build to be able to accept the experiments, the augmentations and whatnot. So stuff like that I really love to get inside, like the origins of like these experiments, and like the armor was a big thing with them too. The in Jedi
Oh
Knight,
yeah.
Jedi Outcast, they have Cortosis armor, which is lightsaber resistant. Now that is canon now because in Thrawn Alliances, there's there's a flashback with Anakin, Thrawn, and Padme, and they are on Batuu, and they find out a nearby planet in the same system as Batuu having a factory that is like creating Cortosis armor for super battle droids, and apparently Palpatine had put the order in to make those. So I would love to finally see some callbacks to that. Like, why haven't we seen more Cortosis? What is the big deal? Like, why doesn't every stormtrooper have Cortosis? Why is it taking as long to have that kind of armor? Maybe because they're just not concerned because there's no more Jedi around anyway. Why put the money into that sort of thing? But can you imagine if if those are the opponents that Ahsoka's fighting? And you see her struggling because her lightsabers are not doing crap against Cortos's armor. I would just love to see that.
Oh yeah, I think that'll be really cool. And I honestly could, now that you say that, I could see that potentially happening because this show isn't the Ahsoka Tano show. This show is The Mandalorian. So I could see her getting into some trouble. And like you were saying, Chris, like from a general audience point of view, that maybe general audience members being like, "Oh no, this Jedi, is going to get taken out," and then the Mandalorian saves her some way or another. So maybe that's going to happen. But I think either way, though, we're going to be having the Dark Troopers in action this coming week, this coming episode here in a few days.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, we had a lot to say about this episode. And for those of you watching, Milton Weber, we're usually joined by him every week. He couldn't make it, unfortunately, this week. Something came up for him. He'll be back next week, and we'll have him say his thoughts on this episode before we dive into next week's episode, which is Chapter 13, and tentative title could be The Jedi. So we will wait and see with great interest. But we're going to do final thoughts and score out of 10. So, Ben, just say what you have to say about this episode 12 or Chapter 12, The Siege.
Well, one thing to throw out there before I give my final review, again, huge props to John Carlos Esposito. Like, he nails playing an Imperial officer so
Oh,
well. Like, every time he's on screen at the end of that episode, like, it literally just had Vader vibes, in my opinion.
uh-huh.
It just felt like Darth Vader, like, inspecting the troops, and like he just does such an amazing job at playing an Imperial officer. So big shout out to him. But in regards to the episode, I think the episode is very, very good overall. My only ding on the episode, I think, is I I mean, I've watched the episode 3 times now, and I still don't think I understand. So when the rebel pilot at the end talks to Grief and is asking about the Razor Crest, and he Grief's like he's never seen it, or he doesn't know what's going on at this base, blah blah blah. Like, why wouldn't Grief? I don't know. I just don't think why wouldn't Grief talk? Why wouldn't Grief be like, yeah, we blew up this Imperial base? Like, you know, it's almost viewed like it's a bad thing, but he's talking to a rebellion pilot, so wouldn't it be good for them to do that? So
I
like,
yeah. I I think what it is they like their neutrality, and if they do confirm like they took out the Imperials, next thing you know, the New Republic's gonna
oh
sweep
yeah,
in with all their fighters, and then after the action, they're gonna be like, "Hey, you guys should really join the New Republic," and they're gonna be like,
yeah,
"Nah, we're kind of good over here," and they're gonna have them looking at them all the time, like just pressuring them to join, join, join.
yeah,
No, we're good. No, we're fine. The Imperials ruled this planet before. We kicked them off. We're proud to be independent. They just don't want to have anything to do with the New Republic. I think that's basically what it is. Maybe there's
yeah.
another reason.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my little critique of the episode, just because that I don't think was communicated very well. Um, but with that, I would give the episode a solid 8 out of 10. I think it had really good action. The comedy was really good. The lore was really good, between basically mentioning midichlorians to the little callbacks to A New Hope to obviously the Dark Troopers. And yeah, I think it was a really good episode. And now we're on the space flight to Corvus to go visit Ahsoka Tano.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. That's a fair score. For my final thoughts, another solid episode. So far, 3 out of the 4 episodes have been great, if not excellent, in my eyes. There's been a lot of tension. The action, again, just keeps getting better and better. Carl Weathers, man, this guy's awesome. I just love how humble he is. He's on Twitter, just like shouting out all the fan groups and stuff like that, like retweeting the fan. Like, it's great to see that guy so active in the community and really representing Star Wars in the way he does. It's just so good. You know, it's nice to see that. It really is. Um, but yeah, talking about the show itself, this episode itself, like you said, the lore was amazing, tying it into things that could lead to other mysteries, maybe things to some of the feature films. Getting all those callbacks to A New Hope was just awesome. Seeing what's becoming of, like you said, I was gonna say Grand Moff, Moff
Mm.
Gideon. Uh, he's just so good. That's why they got this guy. He plays the character of Gus Fringe in Breaking Bad, which is again one of the best characters in ever for TV as far as villains are concerned, and he brings it here again in Star Wars. He's having a great time with that role. Yeah, everything about this episode was good, and it really leads to like setting that momentum. The momentum just keeps getting upped and upped and up, and now we have other character perspectives. I really like that about this episode almost more than anything, is knowing the fact that we're going to get multiple avenues for development of these characters that are kind of doing their own thing, like you were talking about. A large segment didn't even have the Mandalorian in it, so there we go. We know that the show doesn't need the Mandalorian to just be that damn engaging and engrossing. So with that being said, I'm also going to go with an 8 out of 10. I know a lot of the times our scores kind of even out, but on my scale, I say the same thing because there's a couple points taken off just for the fact that certain scenes, they didn't really have to be there. Like, you know, the whole elevator with the lava thing. There's a lot of good comedy bits in there. I don't think that needed to be there. Trim it down, whatever. See, this is what I'm saying. Like, the fans always want the longer episodes, even with the episodes that are like medium length, they could still be cut down sometimes. But that's really just a nitpick. And I keep my scores kind of lower, just knowing for the second half of this season has the potential to just blow my mind. So I don't want to give out like straight 9s and 9.5s right now, and then realize that, oh crap, I scored these episodes too high. So, and it's the thing with these episodes, right? You watch them multiple times. The multiple people in this chat have seen this episode more than 2 times. I've seen it twice. So every time you watch these episodes again, you come back weeks later, you watch them again, you get a different kind of feeling for them. That's what Star Wars about it, and what makes every Star Wars piece of fiction great is the way that you're able to watch it over and over again and still glean new information every single time. So I just want to do a quick shout out to the active chat we had. Once again tonight, we were joined by Chris Forsyth with the Lowdown Show. Both these guys have YouTube channels. Check them out. We have Joel Davis. We have, and your cousin, we have Keegan Maynard. So there you go. Beyond the Blast Doors was here. Didn't even know they were in here. That's awesome. Another great channel you definitely subscribe to. But that is going to do it for me, Ben, and Milton, who is not here. You can check him out at Milton Weber 7 something.
7.
Yeah, there we go. Milton Weber 7. He'll be back next week. We got real Ben Maynard, and of course, I'm Star Raptor on the channel. You can expect lots of Star Wars content. It's been a very, very busy week for me. Last week, I put up my review for the holiday special. I will be putting up a review, like I said, for The Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. I will also be putting up a review for a brand new Star Wars game that is flying under the radar for a lot of people because a lot of people don't have an Oculus Quest 2 yet. And I hope that I persuade people in my review to try their best to get one because I really like this game, and that is Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. That's actually what I'm going to be doing as soon as this goes off. As I end the stream, I'm going to be playing that game. So lots of good Star Wars content to look forward to. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of that. That's going to do it for Ben. For me, Star Raptor, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, 8 o'clock Sunday Eastern Time. May the Force be with you. This is the way. Okay.